Okay. Okay. Once again, good morning to all of you. I am Umesh Dhargalkar, and we are now starting our second webinar in the Insights series for redevelopment. So this time our theme is feasibility of redevelopment. Well, let me first start by saying that feasibility is a largely misunderstood concept in the field of redevelopment. Most people take it as feasibility meaning, something like this, what commercial benefits they would get from the project. So immediately when people talk about feasibility, the two things that come to their mind is, how much extra area would I get from my project and how much purpose would I get? And that's what they understand by feasibility. Now, in this webinar, we are actually going to see what feasibility really means because it's actually a very detailed exercise and getting or estimating the benefits from redevelopment is just the end result or a part of the study. It's not the whole of it. So it's a very complex exercise, which people make a mistake of, misunderstanding it as something like a school level arithmetic, wherein they can just calculate the cost, estimate some revenue, see um, how the profit works out for the developer, and then get an idea, or at least they seem to get an idea about what benefit they would get out of the project. There's a lot of arbitrariness in this. I've seen so many feasibility reports prepared by so many PMCs, which are just, you know, cost and revenue statements. The whole of feasibility sometimes report sometimes, constitutes 2 to 3 pages. There are just numbers and numbers and numbers. And finally, at the end, there's a conclusion saying that you will get these benefits. Many people fail to understand the complexity and sensitivity of redevelopment projects. And then they make the mistake of taking the whole project for granted. Well, I would like to tell you that feasibility study is one of the most fundamental and important study which needs to be done before you actually take up a redevelopment project in all its seriousness. So here today we are, to understand this concept in greater detail. And in this Insight series, we have started this series wherein we plan to do one webinar every month, roughly, on different subjects of redevelopment. Last time we dealt with the effects of COVID and how to do a project in spite of being in the COVID situation. And now we are going to do a study of the feasibility reports. So what I'll be sharing with you today is actually based on my experience as a PMC, my understanding of the market situation, which has evolved over a period of time, my personal experiences with so many projects, and again, as a PMC, what I have learned from my own projects and from the other projects and from the situation at large. So let me start the webinar by sharing my screen. Give me a minute to do that. So here we are. I hope you are able to see my screen. So what we are going to talk about today is feasibility of redevelopment, the purpose, we should be doing feasibility report, what are the advantages and the applications of that. First and foremost, why this webinar? Because what is required is a great insight into the important aspect of a complex redevelopment project through a feasibility report. Sorry. Yeah, sorry for the technical problem. So Why this webinar? Number one, because feasibility, as I said, is the foundation of a redevelopment project. This is where you start your project. And I don't need to tell you that unless your foundation is sound, your project is not going to be sound, your project is not going to be stable. Now, feasibility is important for both the client, which is the society, as well as the developer. And both of these are constituents in the project. Like the society is going to see the feasibility from their angle, with a prime consideration being, how does the project look to me, and what I can get out of it. And the developer is also going to have his own vision about the feasibility report, wherein he will look at your project as a business proposal and look at it in this way, that how much do I need to invest and how much do I stand to gain out of this project. So it's important from both the sides. But it's not just a feasibility report is just not something which we do right in the beginning. It has much wider application. This being an extensive study, number one, is useful as a techno-commercial basis to start a new project. When you are starting a new project for your own society, your foundation is based on the report which you prepare at that stage. But that's not just about it. The same report or a similar report or a modified report can also be used at the next stage when you are negotiating with the developer. How do you negotiate with the developer? On what basis do you negotiate with the developer? Again, the same thing, the feasibility report. So, feasibility report also has an application while you are negotiating with the developer. Now, just imagine your project goes ahead and there's a time when there are some changes in the market, some changes in the policies, like say maybe some additional FSI getting released, or some policy getting changed, some premiums getting changed, or some kind of a misunderstanding between you and the developer, which sets in the middle of the project. How do you resolve the misunderstanding? How do you adjust, the project to take into account the change in policies or the change in premium? Again, you can go back to the feasibility report. Similar calculations, although not the same calculations, because the calculations will now be different for the different policies and different premiums or whatever different situation. But then you can again stick to the same logic of feasibility calculations and use it as an objective tool to again put the project in a sound understanding between you and the developer and again go ahead. I have done this in a number of projects. This actually really works well. It's very, very useful. You have to have an understanding about the cost, the revenue, the different costs, of course. There are almost more than 25 to 30 costs involved in the feasibility calculations. Good understanding of the cost, which costs change at a later point of time, to what extent it changed, how did it impact the feasibility, how did it impact the profitability of the project, and like that, then if the profit has gone higher, then in what manner we can share, or the developer and the society, how they can share that. And lastly, the same calculations, the same feasibility calculations can also be used as a fair basis to revive stalled or failed projects. I have done this in two projects. When the project came to me, that earlier developer, the contract was terminated, and the project had to be started with a new developer, with all those previous, I would say, problems or whatever things which were on their record. Now, what was required was that, a better understanding of the current situation of the project in view of what the previous issues were there. With those issues and the new understanding, the new FSI potential, the new premiums, the new costing, and on the basis of that, we have been able to revive two almost failed projects, wherein the earlier developer his contract was terminated. So this becomes a very, very, I would say, rational, fair, and objective basis on which your project can stand, and that's how it should be. So the last line in this slide says the feasibility study should give great insights into the technical and commercial aspects of redevelopment. Now let's understand what is a feasibility report. Well, I this slide I have tried to give you my understanding of a simple understanding of a feasibility report. Many times in our life, it so happens that we unnecessarily make things complex. The principle, the calculations, the insights are fairly simple. But then those things are unnecessarily made complicated, and because of that, our life also becomes complicated and clumsy. So, how would I define a feasibility report? I would say it's the possibility of implementation of a business proposal wherein both parties can be assured of reasonable return. Now look at the two words which are in red color here. The possibility of implementation of a business proposal. The first thing that is required is that the project or the business proposal should be such that it can be implemented. Then only there is a sense about talking about returns and everything. If we have issues that the project cannot be implemented only, then there is no point in talking about what returns we will get. So first and foremost, we have to understand that implementation, the project should happen, then only and when it happens, is there a possibility that this particular project, my society, my plot, can be done, they can be converted into a redevelopment project and can be implemented in its full scope as a successful redevelopment project? If the answer is yes, then the next question would be, in that case, what would be the reasonable returns for me? When I say me, I will say society. Eventually, when this is seen by a developer, he is also going to say the same thing, and he will say, what are the reasonable returns for me in terms of my profit? So I would say this I could think of as the simplest kind of definition of feasibility. Now here you also have to say here that profit is to be shared after all costs and risks are covered and sustainability of the project is assured. So the project has to go on, the costs have to be invested, the risks have to be squared off, and then only you have certain returns or certain benefits to be shared. Why I am saying this? Because when we talk about extra area costs and such benefits, what we have to keep in mind that the extra area is actually going to materialize after the project is over. When the building is completed, when I take possession of my flat, then only I am able to see that extra area in reality. Prior to that, I am only having it only as a concept, sometimes on a paper, sometimes in the air, sometimes anywhere. So what is required is that all those costs which are required to make the project sustainable have to be met, and all the possible risks and uncertainties in the market or in the policies or wherever have to be squared off in order to make the project feasible. Unfortunately, this simple understanding is often forgotten in pursuit of greed, leading to failure of a feasible project. I have seen this happening. Sometimes, unfortunately, in a couple of my projects also, where the project is feasible, right? But then, whatever is the picture emerges from a feasibility report, okay, or later on when we negotiate with the developer, sometimes the client or my client or the society, okay, they feel, no, this is not enough, there should be something more. And my FSI should be something higher, or I should wait for a better policy, or the selling rate is higher, so I should get more benefits and things like that. So with this understanding that a project only has to happen because feasibility means that the project has to happen, and then if once you ensure that the project is definitely going to happen, when the cost will be met and the risk shall be covered, then we talk about feasibility. And now that was a very simple definition. If I make change over to a little technical definition, or I would say a definition which we accepted in the language of project management, then I would say that a feasibility report is a techno-commercial study. It's an independent, in-depth exercise carried out by your PMC when you appoint a PMC at the beginning of your project, right? And then the PMC has to look at your project and work out its feasibility. What does he do? What does he do? Two things. Number one, first is the technical feasibility of your proposal. Because unless the proposal or unless your project is technically feasible, there's no point in talking about what the cost would be, what would be the financial viability, and what will be my return. So first thing to be very carefully seen that the foundation of a foundation of the project is the technical feasibility, and then the next, once we know yes the project is technically feasible, then we cast it into the terms of the financial aspect, wherein we talk about the cost and revenue and interest, internal rate of return and things like that, and then we are able to arrive about the financial implications of that, and then the resulting profit to be shared or the resulting benefits to be shared, and then how much a society would get from that project. We also need to remember that the feasibility study is a current picture. Current is in, I would say, bold and capital here. Current picture which has been prepared with some facts and some assumptions. All three words are very important. It's current picture. That means it is the picture at the time when the report was prepared. And never make a mistake of thinking that this will remain the same. All of us, we know that the policies change, the cost change, the circumstances change. Sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better, whatever. But then as those things change, naturally, your feasibility report doesn't, the feasibility calculations don't remain the same, right? So here, I would like to point out one thing here. Typically, when you start your redevelopment project and tell your PMC to prepare a feasibility report, and then he prepares that report. Now see, from the preparation of that report to the time when you select a developer, because feasibility report, as I said, is your internal study. It's a study prepared by your PMC or your internal understanding, internal consumption, on the basis of which you go for tendering. Now, when you go for tendering, then the developer looks at it from his angle, and then he gives you a certain offer based on his perception, his understanding, his expectations about the project. Okay. Now, if you see the time period here, from the time the report is prepared to the time you would get a confirmed offer from a developer through an entire tendering process, is something like 6 months. Something like 6 months. Sometimes it can be longer than that. Okay. If everything is good, if your documentation is good, and if your project is actually has been formulated in a nice manner, then you can hope to select a developer in a period of 6 months from the finalization of your feasibility report. Now, having said that, you need to understand here that what you had prepared was at point T, whereas what the developer is going to offer you now is at a time which is T plus 6 months. So there itself 6 months have elapsed. So naturally, we cannot expect that our report or our study has remained same in those 6 months. Now see the fun of it further. Now suppose the developer, suppose thereafter we have a proper negotiation with the developer. Of course, when the developer quotes and your report is of course going to be useful to you, because then you can make those adjustments or those adjustments to the extent of the policies which have changed and still compare with the developer's offer. That can be done. But remember here, the earlier calculations have not changed, they are transformed into something new. Now, third point here is that after the developer has been appointed, then it will be like, you'll be signing an agreement with him, and then he will be putting the proposal to the BMC or to the local municipal corporation, because I know some of your people who are attending here are not from Bombay, they may be from outside. So whichever local authority, when the society or the developer puts up the proposal, that will be like something like another 4 to 6 months. So even from the time when the developer was selected to the time when he actually is putting the proposal, because when he puts the proposal to the approving authority, it's possible that in that period also something will change. It's possible, and this goes on. So even after you get a secured, what we call as IOD or approval from the approving authority, thereafter the market situation can change. So this is a kind of Feasibility is never constant, is never fixed, it goes on changing. But as far as the client or the societies are concerned, what matters is mainly what primarily matters is the time initially the time when you prepare or do a feasibility study and the transition right up to the selection of a developer. Okay. Now it has to be a realistic preview of a redevelopment project as a business. What we do here in a techno-commercial study is that eventually, suppose we are going to have a developer coming in and doing the project. Now, from that angle, it becomes important that we look at our project, we meaning our PMC and ourselves, we look at our project from the point of view of a developer. We try to be in the shoes of the developer and look at our project as a business proposal. But remember, we have to be realistic. If you have seen the redevelopment guidelines, which are commonly known as 79A, which is a part of a redevelopment process, you will find that this word realistic has been categorically mentioned there. Because unless you are realistic, you see, you can never be real, you can never be exact, but you need to be realistic about your project and your projection, your study, your cost calculations, everything should be based on realistic assumptions. There are certain facts, there are certain assumptions. What are facts? The facts are your plot area. The facts are your existing FSI that has been consumed. The facts are more or less technical. Okay. What are assumptions? Assumptions are what could be the market rate, what could be the construction cost, what could be the premium. These are the assumptions. So this report is based on facts and assumptions, and those assumptions have to be realistic. Then only you will get a realistic study of your project. Primarily based on FSI potential. Here, as a society, when you are a part of a development project, one is a society, the other part is a developer. As a society, what do you pledge to the project? आप क्या देते हैं प्रोजेक्ट में? हम देते हैं हमारा प्लॉट, right? So we don't give anything. In fact, then we don't put in any money. In fact, we want the developer to put in all the money. And in fact, we also want the developer to bear the cost of our rent and also offer us purpose. So we are definitely not going to put in money. But in this arrangement or in this partnership, if we want to call it so, what we are pledging is our plot. And when I say plot, what we are pledging is our FSI. So this report or this study is primarily based on FSI, which is the most, I would say, important and restricted commodity. There is a certain maximum FSI which you cannot cross. So based on that FSI potential, a report is prepared. And it also depends on, as I said earlier, developer's probable viewpoint. How does the developer look at your project? His viewpoint. We are not nobody to say whether his viewpoint is right or wrong. That's his perception. What he expects from the developer, his expectation. How he looks at our project is his perception. Do we know the perception of a developer? Obviously we don't. Do we know how much does he expect from a developer? Obviously we don't, because we don't even know the developer. Today we are at the beginning of the project. Therefore, we can only think about the probable viewpoint, which is again based on the PMC's experience in this field. Sometimes I have come across situations wherein people talk about, PMC का offer क्या है? When the report comes, PMC ने कितना offer दिया है? PMC presents a study to you. He never gives you an offer. He is not a business. He is not coming here to do your project as a developer. But he is presenting perhaps one scenario, maybe two scenarios, depending on circumstances to you. Maybe three scenarios, whatever. But then all these are scenarios which give you a study or a viewpoint from your perspective about the redevelopment project. This report should be presented to the general body so that everybody understands what they may not understand the complex calculations which have gone beyond that. But whatever are the essential parts of the project, or I would say summary of the project, summary of the feasibility study, is something which should be definitely shared with the general body, which is very, very important. Now, last line is very important. Sometimes I have come across some people, especially, I would say professionals. You know, I'm a professional. So today I'm talking about some professionals, wherein I'm a civil engineer, I'm a structural engineer, but I have come across civil engineers who think that they don't understand the redevelopment project. There's no doubt that they understand the civil engineering part of a redevelopment project, but that's not the whole thing. There's a management part, there's an architecture part, there's a finance part, there's a taxation part, there's a legal part, there's an actually construction management part. There are so many things here. So a civil engineer looking at a feasibility report from his own narrow perspective and thinking, ये मेरे समझ में आता है, or a lawyer thinking in the same way, or a chartered accountant thinking in the same way, or a financial analyst thinking it in the same way. I would say these are individual perceptions. I often give an example of an elephant and those blind men. A blind man feels the ears of the elephant and imagines the elephant how it would be. Another blind man holds onto the tail. So this is what happens. So for all those people who think that feasibility study is just the back of the envelope calculation, I just want to say sorry. It's something which is much more involved. There are people who think, "Arey, itna cost aega, ye aega, फिर ये रेव भी." It's not so easy, which we are going to see in this presentation itself. Now, when I said that feasibility report is I would say, as a technical, it consists of two parts. One is a technical feasibility and a financial viability. Okay, then let us see what technical feasibility means. Essentially, technical feasibility has everything to do with your plot, FSI, and ownership of the plot and things like that. Okay, let's look at that. So when you start a study, or when your PMC starts a feasibility study, the first thing that you should do is first of all check your documentation. आपके प्लॉट में क्या क्या अच्छा है, क्या क्या खराबी है. Are you good to go for redevelopment? Do you have the authority to do redevelopment? Are you the owner of the plot? Okay. Are there any restrictions? How do the various property documents look for your plot? So this is a study which is extremely important. If you don't do this, and if you proceed with your only with the help of some financial calculations, costs and this thing, perhaps you will land into a deep trouble at a later stage. So what is required is a deep study or a detailed study of property documents and your old plan. So first and foremost here is the conveyance part. Conveyance means clear title of your plot. Are you the owner of the plot? Do you have the conveyance in your name? Many people say, हमारे पास conveyance document है. Having a document doesn't mean you have a clear conveyance. You have to read through the document and find out whether you are really, because it's a document, so it's so many pages. What has been written in the document is more important than the document itself. Okay, so we have to first establish that you have a clear title and you are owner of the plot and you can redevelop the project. For those of you who are having a leasehold land, there may be someone who is the owner of the plot. You are the lessee. He is the lesser. So then, in that case, you have to find out from the lease deed: do you have the authority to redevelop it, okay, or to develop the plot? Or if the authority is given, then are there any conditions mentioned for that? Because those conditions are going to come into our feasibility calculations as cost. So this is something which is important. So if you have a leasehold land, then, and if the ownership of the plot is with the lessor, then the lessor also has a stake in what you are going to get from the redevelopment project. And how much does he expect is $1 million question which needs to be answered before you take the next step. Now, if a particular land is a collector's land, okay, you are not the owner, the collector may be the owner, but there may be a way that there may be a certain policy wherein you have to make certain payment to the government and the land becomes yours and then you can redevelop. Now, what is that cost? That cost also has to be established and understood, so because that is going to be your cost when you are doing a redevelopment project. Then old plans, your initial plans, maybe 30, 40 years back when your building was constructed. Those plans are important because they tell us how much FSI was consumed at that point of time. Okay, and and what was the the boundary at that? What was the plot area at that time? Especially what we call as pro forma A at that time, the FSI consumption statement. Now these are the documents, conveyance. Normally you have it with you because it belongs to you. Plans also you may be having your possession. Then physical survey will be required if you are going for redevelopment. What do I mean by physical survey? You need to get someone, I would say a licensed surveyor, to physically measure your plot, draw it on a CAD drawing, that means a computer aided drawing, show show the boundaries, show the walls, show the trees, show the buildings, show the water tanks, everything, and uh, gives you the picture of the plot which is there in your possession. Now, what you have in possession may not, physical possession, it doesn't necessarily mean that you own the land. Physical possession, and I am coming to that little later. Second thing, what you need to have about your property or about your plots is some documents, okay, which are available in the public domain. For example, property card, CTS plans, DP remarks. If your plot is in TPS scheme, then town planning remarks, RL remarks, road line remarks, and such other things. Now these remarks tell you about the conditions which could be applicable to you if you want to do the redevelopment. So unless we study those remarks, okay, we are not going to get the idea, or we are not going to understand those conditions which could become a problem a little later. So we have to have a good understanding of these remarks and these documents, and these documents must be latest, as this red word says here. Because sometimes DP remarks go on changing. CTS plan perhaps should not change. RL remarks go on changing depending on the work which is done, the development work and everything. So what you need to do at the time of when you are starting the project, you need to have these latest drawings with you or these latest documents with you, and on the basis of which your feasibility study should be calculated, should be carried out. And from these study of these documents, you should first find out, is there any restriction on your going ahead with the redevelopment? Because when you say feasibility, if there is a serious restriction, obviously feasibility is zero right in the first place, right at the first step. Suppose you are under the influence of a CRZ regulation. Today, you cannot do redevelopment because you come under that CRZ. Or maybe there are requirements, you are close to a Navy depot or say an Army depot. These are the things which are many times given in the DP remark. So that is to be studied. Okay. Then conveyance. Are you the real owner? Yeah, as I said, if it's a leasehold land, what are the conditions under which you can develop, do the redevelopment? And lastly, is there any litigation? Like there are some projects which we are also dealing with certain projects where there was an earlier developer, and since he did not perform, the society terminated agreement with them. Now they want to start a new project with on a new slate. That's fine. But then when you are doing that, there is some old baggage which is already there which needs to be addressed. Now, can it be addressed two ways? Number one, there are two aspects here when an earlier arrangement has been terminated. Number one is legal, the second one is financial. So, firstly, you will have to find out whether legally the project can go ahead, okay, when the previous developer the contract has been terminated. Secondly, if we can go ahead, then how much do we have to think about as a kind of compensation that would be required to be given to the previous developers, just in case that is required to be given. I have seen some societies, when they terminate a contract with the earlier developer, they make a mistake of calling the new developer and saying कि उसको मतलब आपको उनके साथ सेटल करना पड़ेगा. A very very dangerous kind of situation. आपको उनके साथ सेटल करना पड़ेगा means what? It's a completely undefined thing. See, the liability is yours. If you want to transfer your liability of say maybe 5 crore today to a developer, perhaps he will inflate it to 10 crore. Okay, in which case you are losing 5 more crore because you thought it was easier to transfer your liability to the new developer. Okay. Second point is that this legally still remains your liability. So if the new developer doesn't perform, you still have a problem. You cannot say नहीं हमने उसको बोला था कि आपका headache है हमारा नहीं. आपका legal headache is yours only. You can only hope to pursue it legally simultaneously as well as make provision for that earlier arrangement in terms of, let's say, for example, if I feel that I should go ahead with the new developer, but if I feel that I may have to square off the earlier developer by paying 5 crore, then that 5 crore is something which I have to build in my project and be ready that if a situation arises that the earlier developer comes for settlement or if the court directs him to pay, direct us to pay certain money to him just in case, then I should have those 5 crores ready with me. The liability is mine. The defined damages are mine. They are not, unlimited damages because I have seen such arrangements कि आप उनके साथ settle करो never working. Whereas this kind of arrangement where you decide what your liabilities are, you decide your position and go ahead with them. These projects we have been able to do 2 of them very successfully. So this is something which has to be understood. This is an upfront cost, a provision, which may not be there in the normal redevelopment project, but just in the case of a failed redevelopment project, this is a significant cost. Permissible height is planning required. In a previous slide, I said that redevelopment is basically it depends on the FSI. But suppose you have lots of FSI, but you are in an area which is close to the Mumbai airport, and then you have lots of FSI, but you are not able to consume the full FSI. What is the point in having that FSI? So in such cases, which are not everywhere, very close to wherever there are serious height restrictions, what needs to be found out is this: how much is your FSI, okay, entitlement, and how much of that can be reasonably consumed in your plot. Suppose you may have an FSI of 10,000 square meters, but then you are able to consume only 8,000 because you are not able to go higher. Okay, so in that case, your feasibility should be based on 8,000 and not on 10,000. Well, it's possible that suppose that 8,000 का बाद में बढ़ के अगर थोड़ा बढ़ सकता है, then we can have a proper understanding with the developer when he comes on board. But my feasibility as on today should be based on 8,000 because that is what is likely to be consumed in that plot. Now, but this is something for plots which are where there are serious height restrictions, like say near airport. Okay, but when the height restriction is not so I would say critical. Okay, like say in the context of Mumbai, maybe say beyond Andheri or towards north. Okay, like or say beyond Santa Cruz towards south. Suppose the height restriction is not going to be critical, then I don't need to do planning at the time of feasibility. I am sure. So I am sure that all that FSI, which is my entitlement, I will be able to consume in my plot. Now, if I have a doubt whether I would be able to consume that FSI, then it is required to actually do a little sketchy planning, which is called boxing. Which is basically called boxing, meaning you basically get an idea about, you don't actually do so much of planning, but then you do the consumption kind of estimate, how much area, how much FSI could be consumed. Otherwise, permissible height is not critical, there is no need to worry about that as long as you are sure that all your FSI would be consumed. Now, the next question is very important, is कौन से प्लॉट एरिया के ऊपर अपना फिजिबिलिटी बैठेगा. नाउ यू माइट थिंक कि अरे हमारा तो 4,000 स्क्वायर मीटर एरिया है. 4,000 स्क्वायर मीटर इज व्हाट यू थिंक. व्हाट इज द रियल एरिया विच यू वुड बी entitled to redevelopment. And this is not an easy question. And that is why I say that back of the envelope calculations are absolutely misleading and they take you nowhere. In fact, they put you in more trouble. These are the things which have to be really looked into. Now, where are the plot areas? You will see plot area. There are different documents which um, uh, mention different plot areas. I can think of 5 of them. The plot area which is mentioned in your conveyance deed. Now, what is that area? That's your legal entitlement. That's your legal entitlement. Suppose that is mentioned as 4,000 square meters. So you feel my plot area is 4,000 square meters. That's fine. But that's your entitlement from the person whom you bought that land or the conveyance was made. This was given to you as 4,000 square meters. But let's say your property card says your area is your actual plot area. Okay, property card which is not in your name, let's say, it's still in transit. It says it is 3,900 square meters. So there is a discrepancy. So area on your conveyance and area on your property card may not be same. Like that, there is another document which is called CTS plan. Now, in this CTS plan, which is a government record, you will find that your plot is shown to a particular scale. It has a particular shape and a particular scale. So with using that scale, putting in AutoCAD, and you can actually figure out what that area. Area is not mentioned. Remember, in conveyance, the area is mentioned. In property card, the area is mentioned in numbers. In CTS plan, it is the plan which is given, the area has to be estimated with a little bit of geometry. Okay. But that area, again, may not agree with the conveyance area or PRC area. Fourth area could be your physical survey. When you do physical survey means you are invited a surveyor. He has actually done a proper survey of your plot, by using a machine which is today known as total station. He has done that and he has given that figure to you as it is existing in your possession. You will be surprised to find that what is existing in your possession, those boundaries and the boundaries in CTS, they don't match. Okay. And then the fifth source could be an old plan. You have an old plan. You think, अरे हमारा plan तो वैसा ही हमने कुछ तो change तो किया नहीं. But then those boundaries there are again different from this. So you have 5 different sources, and it's not easy to finally decide about what your entitlement of your plot area would be, which you can take it to the redevelopment stage. So this is a very important exercise which has to be done before any calculations are done. And this is what I mean by technical feasibility. Road width and status, yes. From where I am going to derive my access and what is that road? What is the width of the road? वो रोड का width कितना है, क्योंकि उस width के basis के ऊपर मुझे TDR मिलने वाला है. And sometimes it may be necessary to even find out the status of the road. Width is just not enough, maybe in certain circumstances. And now you may have a plot area, okay, but then there is a public open space which reduces your plot area. Then there is a road setback which you can get from RL remarks, okay, or DP remarks, wherein you lose your some part of your area. There may be some reservation. If you have a part of a reservation, then that much area is again lost. And if you have an encroachment, you can lose area because of that also. So you have to figure out your plot area, and you have to also find out how much area you are likely to lose when you are going for redevelopment. Now, over a period of time, some of these areas which you feel like, for example, encroachment and everything, and things like that. It may be possible that you are able to negotiate with those encroachers, everything, but that's in future. But when you are doing a redevelopment or when you are doing a feasibility study, if the encroachment is there, we have to take note of that as well. Now, once you have gone through all these technical aspects, I would say technical due diligence, then we are in a position to calculate FSI potential of the plot. What it is, we will see in the next sheet. And we'll also need to finalize the base carpet area of each of your members in the society. Now, allow me to take you to the next slide for more clarity on this. First of all, I am talking in terms of now the city of Mumbai suburbs. Okay, just for example. This is, just to give an idea कि FSI में क्या क्या होता है बम्बई में in the suburb zone. If you are not from Bombay, you may have a similar kind of thought process. You will apply to your. If you are from downtown city of Mumbai, you will have another calculation, but the logic would still remain the same. Then first and foremost, the basic FSI is your plot area. मतलब आप जिसके owner है, Now this is related to your plot area, and this FSI is inherent to the plot. You get this FSI because you are the owner of the plot, and that is for the suburb 1.0, and it is free because you are the owner. There are no charges for that. But if you are the owner of the plot, and if the plot area is from 4,000 up to 10,000 square meters, 5% of that plot area will have to be set aside as POS, that is a direct loss. You can get some benefit, that's okay, but then you have lost that FSI. And if your plot is bigger than 10,000 square meters, then the POS, that is public open space, which the FSI which you lose, okay, is 500 square meters plus 10% of the plot area in excess of 10,000 square meters. So once you have thought about that plot from the entitlement of the plot from, which comes from those 5 different sources of plots, then you have to apply this further correction to get your net plot area. Then what you do is that on the basis of this FSI, you are entitled to a government FSI or what is called as a premium FSI, which is given to you at a price. That price is today 40% of the ready reckoner rate of that location. Many things in costing, many premiums are linked with the ready reckoner rate. So if your ready reckoner rate is higher, naturally the price is higher. So whatever is the ready reckoner rate, 40% of that is the rate, and then total whatever is your plot area, 0.5 times the plot area. If your plot area is 4,000, then half of 4,000 is 2,000 into that rate is the price which you have to pay, and then you get the government FSI. Then there is additional FSI which is in form of a TDR, which depends on the roadway. If your building or if your plot is situated on a road which is 9 meters or little wider than that, then you get 0.5 additional. Okay, so you have 1 initial, then you have 0.5 government FSI or premium FSI and a 0.5 TDR, which makes it 2. But if you have wider roads, say 12 meters or 12 to anything between 12, around 12 but less than 18, then the FSI is 0.7. The TDR is 0.7. If road is wider than 18 meters up to 27 meters, less than 27 meters, it is 0.9. And for all roads which are wider than equal to or wider than 27 meters, the FSI is or the TDR is 1. So the minimum TDR is 0.5. The maximum TDR is 1. So with the same background, what we can say is the maximum FSI would be 1. That is the basic FSI, plus government FSI, that is 0.5, and the maximum TDR would be 1. So 1 plus 0.5 plus 1 would make it 2.5 if your plot is on a 27 meter wide road or a broader road. If your plot is on a smaller road, then you have to calculate this like that. Suppose you have a plot which is on, say, a road which is 12 meters, okay, then 12 meter wide. Then it will be 1 plus 0.5 plus 0.7, which will make it 2.2. But we need to remember here that this FSI, which is 2.5, is called a cap. I mean, there is no further FSI which is available beyond this, no matter what. So that we have to remember that this is the ultimate limit which is set for Mumbai. Now, in addition to this normal FSI and TDR, what you get is that you get a fungible FSI in Mumbai again, which is 35% of total FSI. So total FSI, whatever you have calculated in the previous slide, plus 35% of that. So if your total FSI is, say, 2.2 for a 12 meter wide road, then 2.2 plus 35% of 2.2, which makes it 2.2 plus 0.77, that is 2.97. So that would be your total FSI, including fungible FSI. Now let's look at the costing of the fungible FSI. Now, out of the total 0.77, let's take that example, 0.77 FSI, okay, which is a total fungible FSI. A part of that comes free to you if you are doing redevelopment. If you are doing a new proposal on an open plot, this is not free to you, but for a redevelopment, it is free. Now, how much is free? Existing FSI which you have consumed as your old approved plan, 35% of that, not 35% of your total FSI, 35% of that initial FSI which you consumed so many years back is free. So from the 0.77, you have to subtract this, which is free, and then what remains is to be purchased. Now, there is one point here. This 35% which is free is actually the members or the society's members' entitlement. Then only it is given free. If it is not used for them, then it is not free. Okay? So that's the condition. Now let's talk about the balance fungible FSI. Out of a total 0.77, 35% of your existing consumed FSI, if you subtract that, then whatever remains, if you use part of that in a residential way in your own redevelopment project, then you have to pay a premium of 35% of the additional rate. And if you want to use it for commercial purposes, then the premium is 40% of the RRR, let me call it that. And then the total FSI, or what we call as the FSI potential of your plot, is the earlier FSI plus your fungible FSI. So the basic FSI plus government FSI plus CDR plus fungible FSI, this is totally called as total FSI or FSI potential. Now, I must mention one particular policy here, which is significant in terms of costing, which is called clause 33(7)(b), which is applicable for buildings which are 30 years old and older than that. What happens here is that for such buildings, a 10 square meter per flat or 15% of existing built up area as per your old approved plan, whichever is higher, two calculations are done. If your number of flats are say 50, so 50 into 10, so 500 square meters, okay, or if your total FSI consumed that time was say about 1000. I'm just taking one example, or say 2000. So 2000 ka 15%, that is 300, and this is 500. So higher is 500. This built up area is can be given to you without charging premium. What we have to understand here is that this is not an additional FSI. A part of the same FSI, if your building is 30 years older, then a part of that, to the extent of this calculation or this area, will be free for you. Rest you have to pay. Okay, so this is so much about the FSI thing which go into our understanding of the feasibility study. Now, I also said that you need to also decide what your base carpet areas are. I call them base carpet areas. People call them, hamara apka carpet area or existing carpet area. Meaning, if you have got 50 flats, and suppose out of 50 flats, there are 10 flats which are of 400 square feet, another 20 flats of 500 square feet, and another 20 flats of 600 square feet. Okay. Now, there are three types of areas here and different types of flats. So the point is, when all the redevelopment benefits in form of total, extra area and corpus are finally realized, how should they be shared among the people? So these are the carpet areas, existing carpet areas, which are used as basis for sharing the benefits. Now I want all of you to get one clarification here very clearly. It is this. Many people think कि भाई हमने अगर ज़्यादा एरिया आपका there I have seen people tendency of people, let us inflate our area a little higher so that we get more benefit. It's not so. Let's understand this, that your redevelopment project, the cost and revenue, they are completely linked with the total FSI of the plot. The only difference between an new plot development and redevelopment is that today you are there, you are going to share the profit. But otherwise, all the costing is little different. But the FSI doesn't change, okay, in both the cases. So, uh, entire redevelopment, entire costing of the plot is based on the plot size and the FSI and other costs. So finally, the total uh, extra FSI and total corpus which results, okay, is for the plot, for the whole society, for all the 50 members. Now the question comes, how we should distribute those benefits among ourselves, and for that, this is the basis. If changing your carpet areas now doesn't change the feasibility of the project. Please keep this in mind. This is very, very clear. I have done number of experiments, number of mathematical models set up to understand this clearly. That if you change, it's something like this. For example, suppose your existing area is 400 square feet, okay, and your the 400 square feet, and suppose the after redevelopment, you are likely to get 600 square feet, let's say, for example. Then you will look at that as 400 ke upar 600, matlab you are getting 200 square feet extra, which is 50%. Of course, nobody forget about the 50% thing. I am doing this calculation just for the sake of easier calculation. So 400 becoming 600 is 50%. Now 600 is something which is fixed for your project based on the costing, based on the FSI, everything. That doesn't change. Now suppose you change your carpet and you say हमारा 400 नहीं है, हमारा 450 है. ठीक है? Fine. Fair enough. The 600 remains 600. Now you have to look at it in this way. If you think that your carpet area right now, or base carpet area is say 450, then you are getting 150 square feet extra. So 150 on 450. So I think 150 divided by 450. So 1 was 33%. So then you will have to look at it as this. If I say that if my carpet area is 450, then my extra benefits are 33%. If I say my present carpet area is 400, then my extra benefits are 50%. So this is a percentage thing, depends on how you divide it with. The total remains the same. So whether you declare your current FSI, today's FSI, or today's carpet area or base carpet area as 400 or as 450, now finally the 600 is the same which you are going to get. There could be a very minor variation, some minor variation because of stamp duty calculations, everything. But in terms of the main cost of this thing, this is something which people have to keep in mind, and that is why I call them the base carpet area. Now fixing the base carpet area, agreeing on the base carpet area, sometimes becomes something like a war. Mera itna hai, mera itna hai, mera itna hai among all the people. Now how do you fix them? Okay, how do you decide the base carpet area? There are three, there can be more than one yardstick. There can be different yardsticks. You can follow this. Whichever way, it actually doesn't matter. Number one, the best yardstick would be that you calculate, or your PMC calculates your carpet area from the old plan. I know a lot of people are crazy. They think हम tape लगा के नापते हैं, कोई point नहीं. The most authentic carpet area today, on the basis of which you will do redevelopment, is there in your old approved plans. Because in your old approved plans, certain FSI was consumed, because of which you are the owner of the plot, and now also we are going to do the calculations on the FSI. So it's an FSI to FSI transition, and that is why I call that to be the most authentic FSI, most authentic base carpet area. So in our projects, mostly we work on them, and this will again, if there is a dispute in future, this will stand you in good state, because this will be a very logical and I would say acceptable basis, or say yardstick. Okay. The second could be, suppose you don't have all approved plans, then what you do? Again, let me tell you, if you do have all approved plans, please follow them and calculate your area. If you don't have them, then what do? Then you measure physically at the site. because that's the next best where you can come to, or any other mutually acceptable yardstick, which is what is important here, mutually acceptable. If you ask me, there is no right base carpet area and there is no wrong base carpet area. It's all an understanding about how you would want the benefits of the project to be shared among you. It's an understanding. It's like understanding by हम लोग इसे share करते हैं. Like if you do a business, suppose three brothers do a business. Someone puts in 10 lakh rupees, the other puts in 20 lakh rupees, the other third brother puts in 20 lakh rupees. 10, 20, 20. Total 50 lakh. So whatever profit comes, that will be shared in the proportion of 10. So first brother will get less, second will get double, third also will get double. Why? Because they invested more. So whoever invests more will get more. Same logic here. If your plot is in your existing flat, if more FSI was consumed, you will get a higher benefit. That's all the logic is. But I have seen so many projects coming to a standstill and failing prematurely. Lots of projects fail prematurely. I would like to say that, that हम लोग builder को बहुत बोलते हैं कि builder ने project fail किया and all that, yeah. And the news comes in the newspapers and we see, अरे इसने fail किया. Actually, I don't think every builder goes with the intention of cheating. Maybe कुछ किया है, कुछ नहीं किया. Of course, he is to be, जो करना है वो करना है उसके लिए. That's a different thing. But so many projects, many times, maybe perhaps 10 times more projects fail before even a builder comes on board. And who fails them? We fail them. Our society, our members, we together fail them by not coming to a proper understanding, because a redevelopment project is a project of an entire family. It cannot be that say 25% of the people get a certain, get a benefit and 75% don't get. ऐसा होता नहीं है. Project हुआ तो सबको benefit है, नहीं तो नहीं है. So people have to understand this when they are actually working on the base carpet areas. And I am going to tell you a few more surprises also. एक सवाल आता है, should the balconies be included? Should the door jambs be included? My answer is very simple. If you want to include balconies, include them, but for all. Okay, so that there is a uniform basis for all. If you don't want to include balconies, that's also fair. Do not be under the impression कि हमने balcony का area छोड़ दिया, हमको offer कम मिलेगा. नहीं. That 600 example which I gave you, you will get the same thing. We have worked on one society where the feasibility was low, wherein we did not count the balcony in the base carpet area. So whichever way, if you want to include balcony or door jambs, you can do that, but you do use the same principle for everyone. Now, in some societies there are people who own private terraces, closed garages. Now, it's very important to have a proper understanding about what additional benefit you would like to share with them. किसके पास closed garage है, इसलिए उसका FSI नहीं बनता है. And let me tell very very clearly here. Closed garage में अगर FSI पहले consume हुआ है in your old approved plan, then he is entitled to that. Just because he has closed it or he is running some tuition classes, it doesn't mean he is entitled to an FSI. But yes, if he is using something for some reason, or if there is a private terrace that person has been using, and in some cases, if the society is charging money, some kind of an additional maintenance for the private terraces, then it makes sense to give them some benefit, not in extra area, but perhaps in some financial consideration. Okay. Again, how much? Nobody can say hamara itna hai. It's basis that again you work like a family, sit together and like have a kind of proper understanding. Mutual agreement is very very important in any redevelopment project. And which yardstick and which method you are going to follow should be decided and finalized and resolved in a special general body meeting, so that nobody feels कि injustice was done to me. Like, all right, there's sometimes people ask me, base carpet area मोफा होना चाहिए कि रेरा होना चाहिए? मैं तो बोलता हूँ कुछ भी चलेगा, but again be consistent. But the problem here, I would suggest that you stick to मोफा. Because RERA, the definition of RERA in terms of, getting balconies, getting, uh, I would say, outside area, there, it may not go down well with all the people in your society, because the definition sometimes it may completely exclude the terrace and things like that. So it is better that you use your carpet area, your present carpet area, which we call as base carpet area, as MOPA. But when you sign an agreement with the developer, you convert that MOPA into RERA, and you have an agreement with the developer which is in RERA. Okay, you have your negotiation on MOPA. You decide everything on MOPA, and finally once you decide something like this, suppose you get on MOPA, suppose you get 30% extra area. Okay, then you can have an understanding with the developer. Then you can draw one or two plans. The developer when he gives you, some kind of a sketches. Then you estimate कि मोपा to रेरा में कितना फर्क पड़ता है. Roughly it is 4%. Okay, roughly it is 4%. Then you can say अगर मेरे को 30% मोपा में दो या 33 या 34% रेरा में दो. That kind of simple understanding can be there. So future agreements can be in RERA. Present understanding can be in MOPA as long as we use it with our common sense intact. Now, so much was about the technical feasibility. Now, my question to you is, you see, when you get a feasibility report, all these things which I have talked about, I have seen that people pay very little attention to these important things. People pay very little attention, and they straight away jump to the number. Now, let us also jump to the number. But before that, when I do a financial viability study for a redevelopment project, the principle again is very simple. Total cost kitna lagne wala? If a developer, now again, when a developer is going to come, how much cost he is going to incur? Now when I say how much cost, all cost, what cost we are going to see now. Now how much cost is going to incur? Let's say that cost is 100 crores. Okay. And let us say, for simple understanding, although calculations are never simple, there are lots of intricacies. We do financial kind of model, things like that apart. Let's say the total cost is 100 crores and the developer would expect a profit of 25%. So he would look at it this way, that I want to invest 100, I will be required to invest 100 crores and I want a profit of 25%. So I need to get 125 crores from this. Very okay. So if I need to get 125 crores from this, then is the society going to give any money? No. Right? So from where does he get money? From sale of flats, from sale of offices, from sale of cars. So the question is, what should be the rate at which he should, okay, fine. So it is 125 crores. Now let's say the selling rate at that location is 30,000 rupees per square foot of carpet area. Let's say. So 125 crore अगर उसको लेना है, so 125 crore divided by 30,000 is the area which you would definitely want to have to get that 125 crore by selling it. And that area is something which you have to give it to him. So what remains is our benefit. Of course, negotiations apart. Now the negotiations, whether he is willing to work at a profit of 20% or he wants a profit of 30%, those are the different things. But very simple method of understanding financial viability is this: total cost plus developer's profit is a certain amount. Then you give so much carpet area to him so that he gets that, he is able to recover that 125 crore. Rest of it is yours. So that's how a feasibility is implicitly done. Although the calculations, and we have a 7-page or 8-page calculations with lots of interlinking, and that is a different thing. But this is a very simple understanding. Let's go into a little detail here. Now, what are the different types of costs? There are, as I said, 25 to 30 different types of costs in redevelopment. Okay. Now, how minutely or accurately you are able to estimate this cost, and the accuracy of your feasibility study depends on this accuracy. Okay. One of the costs, out of these 30 costs, the 25 to 30 costs, I have divided them into three parts, A, B, and C. A is the construction cost. Very simple. I'll go through this fast. It is the construction is actual construction at the site, which includes everything. Now, when I say everything, what does it mean? It includes the FSI potential in form of built-up area which is going to be constructed, then the staircase and lift lobby which will be constructed, basements, podiums, refuge area. Okay, some of these will come free of FSI, but even if, like say, basements for parking may come free of FSI, podiums may come free of FSI. But even if the cost of FSI is not there, the cost of construction will always be there. Then the cost of built amenities, society office, fitness center, clubhouse, cost of car park, equipment, DG sets, so many things, solar equipment if there, land development, construction supervision, project management for the developer. These are all the costs from the developer's point of view. And when from the developer's point of view, our PMC has to look into these costs from the developer's point of view and to make a provision for all these costs. Now, what we see the last line here, what it says, the construction cost is incurred as per the progress of construction. Out of say 100 crore of cost, if your total construction cost is say 35 crores, the developer is not required to invest that everything. In fact, when you vacate and when your building is demolished, that is when this cost starts and it increases gradually. So it is incurred as per the progress of construction. Roughly, if we take the total cost of the project as 100 crore, how much would this be? The total construction cost. It would be about 30 to 40% of the total project cost. When I say total project cost, all the 25 to 30 costs, including your rent, including your corpus, which is a cost to a developer, including premiums, including TDR, all those, stamp duty, taxes, everything. We are going to come to that. So this is 30 to 40% of the total project cost. Now let's see the cost of approval. Okay, cost of approval. Now what cost of approval means? What? All those premiums, TDR, then getting it approved from the approving authority and things like that. Let's see what the components are. Number one, which people many times forget, is rectification of the property document if required. अगर आपका PR कार्ड आपके नाम पे नहीं है, या अगर आपका CTS और आपका physical plot match नहीं हो रहा है, then the matching has to be done, without which you will not be able to do. Or maybe there are your buildings are standing on two plots, and now your project is going to be on an amalgamated plot. Then the amalgamation. Now these are the things which definitely consume certain cost. Many people don't even think about it. Many PMC even I have seen don't even they directly jump to premium, PDR and things like that. But this is very important. But if your property card is in your name, then obviously you don't need to make provisions for something like this. Then premiums, the cost of premiums. The premium for government FSI, the premium for fungible FSI, which you have just seen. The premium for staircase area, which is 25% of the ready reckoner rate. Then there is something called open space deficiency. When you are not able to leave open space, then for the deficiency you have to pay a certain premium. So these are the premiums which also constitute part of cost of approval. Then the TDR, which has to be purchased from the market. Then the fees, which are charges and deposits, which are to be paid to various approving authorities. Various. When I say, or sometimes, of course, to MCGM, that is Mumbai Municipal Corporation. But not just that. A payment to be made. Suppose if you need to get approval, if it is from approval from MHADA, then the MHADA charges. Then you also need some kind of an NOC. Then from the civil aviation, okay, the height restrictions and things like that. So all those things. So these are the fees, charges, deposits, and to be paid to the approving authorities for NOCs, etc. Then the professional fees of the developer's architect, developer's consultant, the structural engineer and his professionals, his PMC, and something which is called out-of-pocket expenses. It goes out of somebody's pocket and gets into somebody else's pocket. So this is the kind of norm which we have come to live with. So those out-of-pocket expenses are also, I am told, although I don't have to go to BMC to find it out, I am told that this is an enormous amount of money to be paid. So that all this comes in the cost of approvals, because you will not get approval unless you pay this cost. Now, many costs from this are linked to the ready reckoner rate. Like we know that the premiums are linked to the ready reckoner rate. Okay. So the ready reckoner rate if for a particular area, if it is higher, then the approval cost also will be higher. And when are these costs incurred? These costs are incurred depending on the stages of approval. Suppose you insist on a developer that you secure the entire approval, load the entire TDR upfront and get the approval, then most of these costs, and there's huge, I mean, a large part of it, perhaps 80% of it or whatever, okay, he will be required to invest upfront. If not, if we tell him, okay, fine, you can get 2 approvals, 3 approvals securely, like in the first approval, you don't need to load even pay the premiums or whatever. Then the initial cost is less, but then progressively he will have to pay this cost. Now again, to give you an idea, how much is the total cost of approval as compared with the total project? Suppose the total cost of your project is say 100 crores, a ballpark figure. Then how much of that would be the amount to be spent towards the cost of approval? Again, 30 to 40%. It's such a big amount of money. Then let's come to the C part, the third part. Now this has 2 parts. Number 1, the cost which comes to us. The cost for the developer which comes to us means to the society. What are the payable to the society or to the members of the society in form of rent, brokerage, shifting charges, corpus or hardship compensation, and your PMC's fees. And if you have some other concern, if you are a lawyer, then the lawyer's fees which you are going to take from the developer. So these are this is first part of this section, C, member benefits and other costs. And then there are other costs. What are the other costs? First is stamp duty. Then if our developer, if you are asking for a bank guarantee, then the bank guarantee charges, GST, then the marketing, like developer's marketing charges, which are quite high today. In the COVID situation, these charges are very high. Sometimes they are as much as 3 to 4% of the revenue. That could include advertisement costs, the brokerage, and things like that. Plus the interest. If we allow, depending on the model of investment and return, there will be certain amount of interest which will be applicable. So there is an interest cost. And then there is a third class which is not there for generally for any new project, but in certain cases these costs, like contingency costs. Contingency means what? A provision about for something which could go wrong in the future. फ्यूचर में कुछ गलत हो सकता है या कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉस्ट बढ़ सकती है, तो आज ही उसके ऊपर प्रोविजन करना, और लोग करते हैं. So that cost is called contingency. Then settlement amount, like say for example, if you are settling with an old developer whose agreement you terminated, okay, and if he says okay fine sir, अब हमारे साथ settle करो, मुझे 4 crore दे दो, if there is an understanding, then that settlement cost will come into your feasibility study. Or if you are doing your project on a leasehold land, and the owner says, okay, fine, I will give you this permission, but I am the owner, so I want so much. So that so much again will become a settlement cost or provision. Now these costs some of them are incurred initially, some are during the project construction, and some are at the end. So these are, you can say, some rent is paid initially, corpus is paid in stages, and things like that. Now, how much could be the total percentage of these costs, of the total cost? That will be about 25 to 35% of the total project cost. So today you know that there are 3 types of costs, but If you look carefully in the three types of costs, I have covered not less than 25 costs. Okay, 25 to 30 costs which I talked about. These are the sections A, B, and C for your understanding, because I am going to share some of my recent findings with you in later slides. So I thought that I should make you aware of this kind of percentage. Now we have talked about cost. Now let's talk about revenue and financial viability. Revenue meaning money coming in to the same person who is spending the money, which is the developer. Which are the factors? Revenue कहाँ से आता है? Think very carefully. There is only one answer: sales. The cost may be 25 to 30. The source of revenue is practically one. This is something which you need to understand. Cost may be, there may be 25 to 30 costs, each cost contributing certain to, the total cost. But the revenue is practically a single factor. You may have revenue by selling flats, selling offices, selling car parks, but essentially they are the same. Okay, flat or office and car park to उनके साथ में जाता है. So what we have to appreciate is that the revenue is only, you can say, a very simple calculation. So many square feet into so much of selling rate, so much revenue. Now, what is the viability for a yardstick? Okay, when you want, now let me tell you, when I'm talking about developers, some of you people may be doing a self-development project. Principles remain the same. Think of you as a developer. Some of the costs may not be applicable, that's all, but the process remains the same. In fact, the headache is much more than that. And all the headache, you definitely in a self-development, you get all the profit that the developer would have got, provided you are willing to take all the headache that the developer is willing to take. It's a very simple calculation. Now, again, coming back to not to the self-development, but to the developer model, what would be a viability from the developer's point of view? Again, we have got different yardsticks here. First yardstick is, अब developer ऐसा शायद बोलेगा कि भाई मुझे इसमें 25, अगर मैं 100 करोड़ डाल रहा हूँ तो मुझे 25% profit चाहिए. Very simple. Okay, right or wrong, let's not think about it. He wants it that way. So, और he may say टैक्स जाने के बाद मेरे को इतना चाहिए. Whichever way. So that is one yardstick from which he will give you a proposal. Developer, when he gives you a proposal or what you call as an offer, he may look at your project in this way and give you an offer of this sort. Or there may be another developer who is little better organized. He may say, ठीक है, gross profit भी चाहिए, ठीक है, कितना that I won't say. I would definitely want gross profit, but I don't mind 25%, but I don't mind getting a profit of less than 25%, provided the internal rate of return of my investment is say 30% or more than 30%. तो बोलता ये कम चलेगा, लेकिन मेरा जो है ना, मतलब रोलिंग जिसको बोलते हैं या cash flow angle, that is eased out. So that's the concept of internal rate of return, which is a reinvestment model. You get money, you reinvest, you get money, you invest, and finally the rate at which your money has grown. That is the internal rate of return. So this is another viewpoint, another yardstick. The third yardstick could be, ठीक है भाई मुझे थोड़ा कम प्रॉफिट चलेगा, थोड़ा कम IRR भी चलेगा, but if my initial investment is reduced, if you want me to load the entire TDR in advance, then my initial investment is very high, then I will definitely want so much profit. But if you allow me not to load complete TDR in advance, or even not even insist on loading all the premiums on the project, then I am willing to consider that you are easing out my investment. My initial money will not be worth so much, and because of which I will be able to give you this offer. So these are the three things: 1, 2, 3: gross profit or net profit, internal rate of return, and initial investment. Now, developers, when they look at your project, they look at all these three angles and internally weigh the situation, and then they give you the offer. And that is why सब डेवलपर आपका feasibility study एक जगह पे, और अगर आपको 10, if you are getting 10 offers from 10 different developers, every developer will have a different understanding, a different perception, and different expectations from the project. Now there is one more point here. intangible. There can be some yardstick which is intangible. वो हम लोग कैलकुलेशन नहीं करेंगे. Okay, but need मतलब क्या, डेवलपर है, मुझे मतलब ठीक है, I will give you this offer because right now I don't have any project with me. I am in badly need of a project. Or I am a developer from Mumbai, but I want to establish myself in Pune. So there I am willing to give you higher offer. Although all these first three yardsticks may not fit into my normal way of business, I will still be interested because I want to make my footprint there in Pune. That could be, or I have also seen this, that there are some developers जिनके पास पहले ही इंक्वायरी रहता है बड़े बड़े डेवलपर के पास कि like they want say we want to set up something like a supermarket. Say we want to set up a supermarket. We are looking for so much large area. Okay, तो आप बना सकते हैं क्या? बना सकते का मतलब इसलिए है कि you will have to, I will buy it from you provided you build it to my requirement. Now when there is an upfront inquiry like this to a developer, naturally if your project is going to satisfy that requirement, perhaps he will put all those numbers on the side and put little more closely from this point of view. अरे एक buyer तैयार है, and he will perhaps give you an offer considering that in mind. So these are the different perceptions of the developer, this different yardstick, and that is why you are likely to get completely different offers. Never be under the impression that this is a mathematical calculations and everything will remain the same. No, you will always have variation. So the commercial offer of a developer depends on developer's perception and expectation. Now, what are the advantages of a feasibility study? A report, okay, before let me tell you that. So a report, what should a report be? Okay, I do not have that a typical report to show you now because I thought it would take unnecessary time. But then typically a report should be that it has to finally first list down all those documents. Then a note about verification and study of those documents, conveyance and everything. And finally, depending on the findings of that, okay, and then make out the assumptions on the basis of which the report is going to be prepared. The assumptions could be technical assumptions have to be done, financial assumptions have to be done there, and the criteria under which this report is being prepared. This is mostly done in Word file, okay, and then based on that, how these assumptions are applied to the project. Okay, that is one report which should be at least 10-12 pages if you are doing a proper work. Okay, and in addition to that, all the detailed calculations which should be in addition to that. So something like 20-30 pages for a very simple feasibility study. If you want to do a feasibility study of a group of societies, which if I have time, I'll come to that later. Then your report can be much more complex with many more pages, treating individual society in their own right and things like that. So let's come to the advantages of the feasibility study. Number one, हम लोग क्या शुरू में बात कर रहे थे कि लेकिन most people look at feasibility study as कि भाई इसमें से मेरे को कितना ऑफर मिलेगा. We have to come out of it. Number one, is my project good enough to be a feasible project? We have to ask this question. We can't take it for granted. But that is what is done by checking the technical feasibility. Okay, so that's the first thing is what we get a good understanding of our project. What we get from a feasibility study, number one, we get a good understanding of our project. How? Number one, status of our conveyance and documentation. I have seen so many societies where people are lived for 40 years and only now they realize that हमारे पास तो conveyance ही नहीं है. 40 साल अच्छे से रहे. Maybe 40 साल, maybe I don't know, maybe 2 generations. Very nicely, no problem. But when they are going for redevelopment, today they are stuck. Why? Because they don't have a proper conveyance. So this is a realization that can strike you blind when you start a redevelopment project. So status of your conveyance and documentation. Restrictions and internal problems. These are the things which you have to understand. Is there anything which binds me that I cannot do the redevelopment project? अरे भाई अभी हम लोग तो CRZ zone में नहीं कर सकते. Internal problems. What are internal problems? Okay, I am having a dispute with the neighboring society about the boundary. Yeah, I have an internal problem. What do I do with the internal problems? What do I do with the restrictions? It depends on the, there's no one answer to that. There's no one. It depends on what is the kind of restriction, it depends on what is the kind of problem, what is the kind of holdback. And depending on that, solutions do exist. We have found solutions in our project. Okay. So I'm not saying that the project is easy. I'm also not saying the project is difficult. All I'm saying is that you have to understand what are the intricacies of the project before you actually get on to do that. Then it will also tell you about the hidden costs. You see, unless you do the study, you will not know whether there will be any settlement costs which would be required or documented. I am working on with a society wherein there is a piece of land which is adjacent to this soil. Now the society thinks it's theirs. Okay, society thinks कि इनका है. उनके पास conveyance नहीं, लेकिन उनके physical possession है. So what to do that? How to rectify these documents? What would be the cost? So these are the costs which have to be understood. And as I said, we need to really, I want to tell everyone. I want to tell the managing committee people. I want to tell the members. I want to tell the PNC. I want to tell everyone. I want to tell myself that our report should be crisp and clear and realistic, because that's the word and that's how it is. Anything which is not realistic is not going to see the light of the day, because it's a very complex project which is going to go on for 5 years. Do not take it for granted कि ये सब अभी का प्रॉब्लम है वो अपने आप आगे जाके ठीक होगा, नहीं होता. Then you have failed project, then you have setback, and then you have a lot of anguish in the society. So yeah, so whenever we see, I have worked on projects where my realistic benefits from a project have varied from 9% to 85%. And in both cases, I was confident. There were reasons why that 85 was 85, and there were reasons why that 9 was 9. Only thing when I do that, when there is such a low result, or say low offer or low benefit, or such a high benefit, I check my feasibility report again and again and satisfy myself. But after I do that, then that's a fact, and that has to be put across to the people. Multiple scenarios can be studied as a preview. You know, ऐसा हुआ तो क्या, वैसा हुआ तो क्या. This is something the feasibility study allows you to do if you have an end-to-end calculations done in Excel. Yes, but I would caution you not to try too many unrealistic scenarios, because the scenarios also have to be realistic. There is no point in saying कि ऐसा, जब भी अगर आप पूरा इंटीरियर में है, if you are in an interior predominantly residential area, okay, there is no point in talking about कि यहाँ मॉल बनाएंगे तो क्या होगा. That's not that. Theoretically, that can be a scenario, but practically it doesn't make sense. Then, very, very important, let me stress on that. It brings out, the feasibility study brings out the strengths of your project or weaknesses of your project and the challenges in the project. Strengths, weaknesses and challenges, they are all there in your technical and the technical feasibility and commercial viability. Then you realize, अरे ये problem है, अरे ऐसा है. If you do not do a proper study, you are oblivious with this problem. So these strengths, weaknesses and challenges should be fully understood, because your tender has to be positioned with these in mind. You cannot float a tender on false information. Keep that in mind. It will boomerang like anything. So how do you disclose? How do you position you can still position your tender. Okay. Like for example, I am in my studies, if I am good at maths, physics and chemistry, but I am not good in languages, then what I will do is that I will, if I want an admission to a particular college, then I will focus on my strengths and also work on my weaknesses so as to get what I want. But I cannot ignore those problems. Now this is a feasibility study becomes a basis for further action and negotiation, which we talked about, positioning strategy and disclosures in the tender. Yeah. So I would like to again caution here that the study only from the financial angle, which I have seen very, very common in society is dangerous. Is very, very dangerous. Now, if we say like that, then what are the key influences in commercial viability? Everyone would like to know. अरे भाई, मेरा प्रोजेक्ट अगर अच्छा करना है, तो क्या करूँ तो मेरा commercial feasibility बन जाएगा? 12 o'clock. Okay. Okay. Okay, fine. So, what are the key influences? Number one, FSI potential. Very simple. If you are higher FSI, which you can consume, then your feasibility will look good. Previous consumption of FSI. As I said, पहले आपने ज़्यादा FSI कंज्यूम किया है, जिसको बोलते हैं ओवर कंज्यूम्ड है. So today you will feel that you are getting less. I am saying feel. Today you will get what your entitlement is as per today's plottage. But you will feel that I am not getting enough. Why? Because you have already got that with you, okay? And you have been using it for the last 30, 40 years. And now you do not think you got it extra. You feel it is yours. मेरे पास पहले से है. And with that reference, when you look at your new feasibility, you feel you are getting less. In a type of visualization of FSI that I explained to you, I gave you an example of, that somebody wanting to do supermarket, if you find a commercial, real commercial usage which can be sold, yes. Selling rate also must be realistic. In the stages, it also depends on stages of loading of premium of FSI and TDI, which I explained to you. If you allow a developer to load the premium and TDR in stages, just let me intervene here. All of those of you who have got questions, please write them in the chat box, or you can send them on the on our mobile number, which is 98197 321. अपना मोबाइल नंबर गया, 98197 32195, correct? So you can put it on WhatsApp or you can put them on the chat box. All those questions, we'll see how many of them we are able to answer. Yeah, and then initial investment, that also I told you, payout to society. If you expect a developer to invest much more initially, your offer is going to go up. Now, whether you should insist on loading the TDR in advance so as to secure a project, that is the part of security. We have to keep two things separate, financial angle and security angle. And we have to look at both of them simultaneously and in a judicious manner. Pending litigation and settlement costs. So these are the key factors which can make or break your project in terms of a feasibility study. I specifically draw your attention here to the two points, which is one is FSI potential and selling rate. Look at them very carefully. They are in red color here. And you can say that, these are the 2 points which are applicable to any project. FSI तो सब project में होता है, selling rate भी सब project के लिए लिखते हैं, litigation सब में नहीं होता है, like point number 7. But these are the two things which are very, very important. And today, when people think about feasibility, I come across a lot of people who say, अरे कभी क्या नया policy आया उसमें ये benefit है. People think so much, they are overwhelmed by this word called policy. What they think, policy आया, अच्छा policy आया तो मेरा project और feasible हो जाएगा. You see, this is where, I am not saying, this is a general perception. If the policy becomes a little better, definitely your project feasibility will improve. But to what extent? For those people who feel that a simple policy will make your project overnight feasible, I am sorry about that. I just want to share with you the exercise which I have done to bring out that point. Insights through feasibility calculation. Let's take, I have taken a model project, in fact a real project. Only thing is that I have modified it to, make it easier for you. I removed the complexities and made it simple because there is one point which I want to make one point here. I'll tell you it well in advance that policies do have an effect on feasibility in terms of reducing the cost. Okay. Like say reduction in premium and all, which is advertised in paper, then people suddenly sleep with very sweet dreams, things like it happens. But the effect is not so much. Whereas the effect of selling rate is very high, which is what people find very difficult. आप किसी को पूछेंगे कि भाई आपका हमारे यहाँ सेलिंग रेट कितना है, 30,000 32,000 होगा, 30,000 32,000 होगा, a very casual answer. But 30,000 and 32,000, those 2,000 rupees difference, what they do to your feasibility study is something which I want to show to you then. So keep in mind, policies welcome, but then not so much. So we shouldn't suddenly be happy कि policy है, उससे कितना फर्क पड़ा. Let's go to that and why. So I am just presenting a model project to you with a plot area of 2,415 square meters, 51 members, a 32-year-old building at Villeparle East, FSI potential building fronting on a 12-meter wide road, 1 plus 0.5 plus 0.2, 0.7. So that is 2.2 plus 35% fungible, that is 2.97. And existing FSI, let's say, not all consumed, fully consumed. Let's make things simple. In fact, for understanding, because we want to see कि अगर ऐसा है तो क्या है, अगर ऐसा है तो क्या है. Then a simple, in the normal feasibility study or feasibility calculation, the cost came to be 36 crores for part A, B, C, which I have shown you. Part A, that is construction cost is 36 crores. Part B, that is approval cost is 34 crores. And part C, the other costs, like, the cost which comes to you and other things like that, 30 crores, coming to 100 crores. Okay, just for making it simple to you. The selling rate is say 32,000 square feet, plus you can sell a car park at 7 lakh per car park. This is the assumption, this is a real project. And total revenue, let's say a developer is willing to take this project at 125 crores. And it means his revenue should be 120. He is expecting a 25% profit. So gross profit is 25%. Internal rate of return, it works out at 30%, which I have not shown you because there is not much time. And initial investment of 39 crores. Okay, let's say he's ready. Now let's take this as a basis. अगर ऐसा है और हम लोग फिर चेंज करते हैं, now let us apply variation. So whatever was there, okay, 100 crore was the profit, was the cost, 125 crore was the revenue or sale. Now let us say the premium, government becomes so generous that they decrease the premium or reduce the premium by 20%. So जो भी 35% हम लोग प्रीमियम भरते थे, it is reduced by 20%. So 35% जब भी reduce जाता है 20% से, तो कितना हो जाता है 7%, so 28%. So a 7% premium is gone. Let us also assume that जो भी 40% आपका जो fungible FSI का जो premium है, that 40% also gets reduced by 20%. So it becomes 30. Instead of 40%, it becomes 32%. We should be happy. Let us. So okay. If that is so, the cost reduces by 4%. So the 100 crore cost becomes 96 crore. That's all. That's all. Okay, just 4% difference. That is what my actual study has shown. Now let me also think. Now you might be aware that in some areas of the city of Mumbai, the ready reckoner rate has gone down. Not everywhere. Somewhere it has gone up also. Let me make a very reasonable assumption that the ready reckoner rate goes down by 5%. Okay, because since ready reckoner rate impacts all other calculations, let's say it goes down by 5%. Now the cost now because of that will be further reduced by 2%. So ये दोनों होने के बाद भी our total difference in the cost will be 4 plus 2 6%, which means that 100 crore cost will only become 94 crore. Fine. आप बोलेंगे अरे 6 करोड़ तो कम हो गया, no problem, हो गया. Difference तो होगा ही होगा. But see what happens when the revenue or when the selling rate reduces. Decrease in sale rate by 5%. Very simple. आपका 100 का cost. So since revenue is directly linked with sale rate, any 5% reduction will directly reduce the revenue by 5%. And so I'm talking about 5%. I'm not talking about 20%. See, when the premium is reduced by 20%, the difference in cost is 4%. Whereas the decrease in sales rate by 5%, the revenue reduces 5%. If the decrease in sales rate is by 10%, the revenue reduces 10%. So the sale rate impacts your feasibility calculations and your profitability much more significantly than a simple correction in some policy. Now, why is this? Very simple, that, as I said, there are 25 to 30 different types of costs. चलो ठीक है, इसमें से 3-4 कॉस्ट को अफेक्ट किया, बट योर कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन टू 100 crore is on account of 25 costs. So when a policy changes, only a few costs are affected. So that is why you will find a policy change, although it will bring in some, I would say, ease into the cost, it is not going to be significant because it is impacting only a part of the cost, part of the total cost. Whereas when a selling rate goes down or goes up, whichever way, your revenue is entirely contributed by selling rate. So any variation there directly impacts the revenue or the sale to the same extent. Now this is what I wanted to share with you.